Imagine, if you will, early morning, New York. You're a common business person walking to work when suddenly an excruciatingly painful sound echoes through the streets. It's the sound of engines, plane engines, flying almost ridiculously low. Suddenly, a crash makes its horrible noise as a hijacked airliner hits the first tower. Screams. All you can hear are screams. Hello, my name is Fisher Ritter, and if you couldn't tell before, the event I just described was a brief description of the horror that is 9/11. Now, what happened afterwards? We all came together for one moment. No bickering, no pestering, no rivalries. We all came together to fix our most prominent problem. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what patriotism really is. It was once said by Helen Keller that alone we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. Another crash makes its horrible boom. Police arrive horrified as well as the paramedics. Less than 2 minutes after the second attack, George W. Bush is notified of these attacks while he's sitting in a second-grade classroom. Later, at about 9:30, the Pentagon is brutally crashed into by a hijacked airliner. After 56 minutes of burning, the North Tower falls. And after another 50 minutes, the South Tower falls. During these critical hours, something magical happened. People were scared, but they also wanted to help. Though mostly police forces were used, people risked their lives to make sure that others were safe. Due to our continued teamwork, in 2011, we killed the very man who caused such pain and suffering in 9/11, Osama bin Laden. That was probably one of the greatest moments in American history. Let me ask you a few questions. Do you think we could have won World War II had we not been united? Of course not. People poured into recruiting offices a plethora at a time to make sure that they could fight for our country and keep our nation safe. Do you think that Martin Luther King Jr. could have eliminated segregation had he not had the help of his fellow tormented brethren? Of course not. He organized peaceful protests and peace marches to make sure that segregation was abolished once and for all. Do you think our country could have accomplished anything had we not been united? No. Because alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what patriotism really is.
Hello, judges, students, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stokely Williams, a true patriot. Have you ever met one or seen one? Now you might think a true patriot is a continental soldier holding a musket, or even a football player on the NFL team called the Patriots. A true patriot to me is my grandpa, who was in the Air Force for 27 years. A true patriot can do so many things that you can't imagine. A true patriot cares for their country. A true patriot stands up for what they believe in. A true patriot cares for those around them. An example is Martin Luther King. He is a true patriot. He did everything he could do to get African Americans' rights and freedom. He wasn't quiet about it either. He did many speeches, including his most famous speech, "I Have a Dream." Clarence Darrow once said, "True patriotism hates injustice in its own land more than anyone else. Think about that quote. Each of us should be a true patriot and do what is right for our country. As I said before, a true patriot cares for his or her country. For example, soldiers. They risk their lives to fight for America. They leave their families to protect everyone, not just one person, but everyone. Now, you don't have to do that. You could do many other things, like, for example, the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance is a quote symbol for America. You could have a flag inside or outside your home as an object of freedom, or just to say you care about your country. You could recycle to save Mother Earth, or you could raise money for the soldiers in war, or to just help America. Next, a true patriot stands up for what they believe in. If you want something, go after it. If you want something to happen, stand up. Don't be quiet. If you want a raise, well then go ask. Like in a book I read called Liddy. The ladies had to work in mills with harsh conditions. It was hot and humid. Lots of the girls died. So you know what they did? They went on strike. Not saying you have to do that, but if you want something, go after it, even if it's hard or scary. You could vote for something that you want, not someone else, you. You could vote for a candidate for presidency or anything you can possibly want. It can be from saving an ice cream shop to saving the world. Finally, a true patriot cares for those around them. If someone needs help, go help them, even if they are your enemies or you don't even like them. Like Richard Kirkland, who I think is a true patriot. It was in the Civil War in the Battle of Fredericksburg. One night he heard wounded enemy Union soldiers. He got canteens with water from the dead soldiers and risked his life to go to the other soldiers and give them water before they died. Right now you're probably thinking, I have to do all that just to be a patriot? Well, you're not the only one, because according to www.nationmaster.com, that we aren't even ranked in the top 25 countries for patriotism. Even though according to www.gallup.com, 1 out of 3 Americans say they are extremely patriotic. Here are some simple ways you can be a patriot. You could donate money, or even donate your time to those that need help around you. Just show you care and don't think you're the only one in the world. To summarize, a true patriot does everything he can do to do what is right. Or as Calvin Coolidge puts it, patriotism is easy to understand in America. It means look out for yourself, but looking out for your country. You could save a dog, a person, or even a little tiny ladybug. You can open doors for people, or just say thank you. Do what matters most to you. A true patriot cares for their country. A true patriot cares for those around them. A true patriot stands up for what they believe in. Are you a true patriot? Thank you.
You're about to sing your #1 hit single to a sold-out stadium. Or you're in front of a bunch of screaming kids, but inside you couldn't be more happy. Or you're in a Dallas Cowboys jersey, about to score the winning touchdown. Or you're in front of a bunch of waiting people, about to say your speech. Hello, my name is Alina Martinez. No matter what it is, everyone has a dream. Whether you thought of it last night in bed or in class when you should have been paying attention. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." Now, I have a question for you. What's your dream? Do you remember when we were little kids and everyone asked us, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" As little kids, we probably answered president, astronaut, or the next Hannah Montana. But now that we're older, we really do need to think about our future. Maybe you still want to be the president. Well, that dream isn't going to happen if all you do is just sit there and think about it, right? Do you think Barack Obama, our nation's first African-American president, just sat there and thought about being our nation's 44th president? No, he worked for it. Now think, what if he didn't dream? What if no one dreamed? There would be no Congress, no army, no Forever 21. Our world would be chaotic, and there would be no patriots to stop it. Now wait, what's a patriot? Well, obviously we all have our own opinion on what patriot is. So instead of standing up here and arguing about it, I'm just going to tell you my definition. A patriot is someone who will never give up, never stop fighting for what they think is right. Someone who will stand up and speak when they know it's needed. Someone who believes in their dreams and will do anything to make them come true. Like Eleanor, she knew she needed to help her husband in office, and she was not afraid to stand up and say what was on her mind. Now look at Miss Obama helping our nation's kids get active. Think about Martin Luther King Jr. He had a dream, and now look at us here, all together, when they said it would never happen. Think about Rosa Parks. She refused to sit in the back of the bus because she knew that was not the way she should be treated. Who do you think gave us our first list of written rights? Thomas Jefferson. And that's not even the beginning. Think about that one caveman that stood up and said, "Hey, that's not right." Our nation is ran by the dreamers. You don't have to have a full news story to know you did something good. Patriots can be ordinary people, like you and me. People who have dreams in America and in themselves and will do anything to make them come true. Now, what about me and us? You know, the kids. Well, how many times have you heard that the future is in our hands? I know I have, and to be honest, it terrified me at first. I mean, come on, parents, you gotta be a little scared about having our nation's kids run the future. But still, we all have a place we wanna be in life, whether it's the president, singing on stage, or that teacher, and we can all get there. So, be a patriot, stand up for what you believe in, because no matter what it is, you're helping America, because you can change the world, and all you have to do is dream. Thank you.
All right, let's see if we can figure this quote out. Liberty. Now, I think that's the same as freedom. And learning, that's like going to school. And peril, that's a little tougher. I think that's like danger or risky. So I think that the first part of this quote means that we all need to go to school and get a good education in order to protect our American freedom. You know, kind of like a soldier in the army protects our freedom. Comparing a soldier to a student may sound kind of funny, but when you think about it, there's really some truth to it. In fact, going to school may be more important to our freedom than having an army. We live in a representative democracy where all adults are given the privilege of voting for our government leaders, and some of us go on to become those leaders. So the only way we can do this well is by being well educated and informed, and the cornerstone to being well educated and informed is our school system. So school really is important. I can't believe I just said that. So after all that, hopefully the second part of the quote will be a little easier to understand. Let's see. Learning without liberty is always in vain. Again, we have the words learning and liberty. And I think the term in vain basically means without purpose. So if you don't have freedom like we have here in America, going to school and doing well doesn't mean as much as it otherwise would. When you put it that way, I guess the second part of the quote makes sense too. So there you have it. The quote is basically telling us of the great importance of education to American freedom. And you know what? Now that we figured out what this quote means, I think I finally get why it was said in the first place. In case you didn't know, the quote we've been discussing was said by President John F. Kennedy at Vanderbilt University on May 18, 1963. America was a very different place in 1963 than it is today. In the South, many schools, including many of the best schools, were still segregated, meaning African Americans were not allowed to attend. Thus, a whole segment of our population was being prevented from being well educated. I think President Kennedy wanted to tell America that not only was segregation unfair to African Americans, but its practice jeopardizes the very freedom we love and cherish in America. As it turns out, less than 1 month after his speech, President Kennedy put his money where his mouth is. On June 10, 1963, he federalized National Guard troops and deployed them to the University of Alabama to force its desegregation. The next day, Alabama's governor gave in to the federal pressure. 2 African American students successfully enrolled at the university, and America was on its way to being a freer country. Surely, none of us want our liberty to be in peril or our learning to be in vain. We all want to be free, and this requires that all of us kids get a good education. Going to school and doing well is not only about getting a good job and making money, but it helps protect the very foundation of our country. When you think about it that way, there's a pretty big burden put on us kids. However, I think we're up for it. I know I am. Thank you.
Close your eyes. Think of yourself sitting in a dark room, not being able to hear anything or speak to anyone, not knowing what the world looks like around you. Now open your eyes. You may just see me, a book, a piece of paper, anything. We all see the world differently, especially Helen Keller. She saw incredibly different. She didn't see the world through her eyes, but through her heart. As she grew up, she's a very angry, low self-esteem girl, until one day when she met one inspiring individual. That person was Anne Sullivan. Once Anne was able to help Helen see and speak, her world opened up, and she was no longer alone in her thoughts. She was able to express herself. One way she chose to express herself was through writing, but another was through speaking, especially one day when she said, "Alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much." Through Helen's eyes, I believe it was her way of thanking Anne in a nonchalant sort of way. However, the meaning behind this quote could be a very valuable tool to solve issues in our current government and even the entire world, such as our budget, healthcare bill, and world peace. First of all, there always is, and there always has been, differing opinions on economics and how our budget should be balanced. Just like in your own household, a husband and a wife may have different opinions on how to spend money. Spouses need to discuss money matters and come to an agreement, which also includes compromise. As we all know, our Republican and Democratic parties often have to work together to come up with solutions, but often have many disputes. To ensure the best results for our country, our political parties need to work together to reach budgetary agreements that will best benefit our great country. If our political parties live by Helen Keller's quote and work together in this fashion, it would show their great love and support of the country. Secondly, the current healthcare bill controversy going around can be changed with an act as simple as working together. We're all in agreement that the healthcare in this country is a huge problem that needs to be fixed. With the current healthcare bill, supported by the majority of the Democratic Party, the Republican Party has obviously not agreed with it. Going back to Keller's words, it would be in the best interest of our great country if the parties came together to create a bill that would help the majority of Americans. Throughout this whole process, the parties only cared about their own bill being accepted, and not what is of the greater good. They aren't showing their care for the country. But if they listen to Helen Keller's quote, they would be able to show their patriotism by uniting the best of both of their ideas, which would result in a beneficial healthcare bill. Lastly, if all countries of the world came together and broke down cultural barriers, we would be able to learn, understand, and enjoy each other's culture and lifestyle, ultimately resulting in world peace. All countries coming together would allow us to view the world from a totally different perspective. It permits us to be more understanding of the society in other countries, allowing us to work closer together. We would be able to collaborate and combine all of our great ideas for innovative ways of improving our world. Thinking outside the box, not only would this eliminate war, but it would also advance education. South Korea is first in reading and math, while Finland is first in science. These are just a couple of the countries on top of worldwide educational rankings. But if we all came together as one united entity, we would be able to thrive off of and take advantage of each other's best abilities and strengths. that what Helen had intended us to take out of her quote? That one person cannot change the world, but one person with many supporters can? Although it is a very large and difficult move, we, as the upcoming generation, need to begin preparing for this next step up the ladder of enhancing and developing our world. Helen Keller was, in my eyes, the most inspiring person ever born. With the help of others, she was able to accomplish everyday obstacles she wouldn't have been able to do on her own. So, with the help of others, she was able to overcome her disabilities to a point. So, when Helen Keller said, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much," she was inspiring the whole world to unite. Not only did it improve her life, but it continues to live on today through economics, our current healthcare bill, and even creating harmony around the globe.
The Mayflower set sailed from England in the year 1620. Many dreams and hopes were sealed in the hearts of the pilgrims who were boarded on the ship. Their only hope was to find a land where they could build a strong foundation to create one strong nation. But these pilgrims were also in the quest of their own democracy and religious freedom. The pilgrims imagined how majestic and splendid their future would be once they found that promised land. And yet, many lost hope on the way. Some even died for numerous reasons. There were so many adverse and complicated trials for these strong-willed pilgrims to overcome. But they got through with the work of cooperation, persevering all the way, and dreaming of what a grand future was to come. And finally, after many trials and tribulations, the pilgrims reached Plymouth Rock in the same year as 1620. And this was just the start of the miraculous journey that these pilgrims would encounter. These pilgrims actually had even more problems starting to build their own country. Both the help of many friends, the land they all once dreamed of, came true. But the question still remains, how did these pilgrims endure and work together to construct and build the land we now call America? Well, these brave pilgrims ultimately built this country by having a dream for it. They dreamed of a land where everyone had a choice and could accomplish anything their hearts desired. They dreamed that this land would go down in history being well-renowned. And they dreamed that this country would be dreamers as well. And all their dreams for the future of America did come true. Just like Eleanor Roosevelt quoted, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." These were the specific words that came out of the mouth of our First Lady. She was indeed a woman that inspired many people, and she truly believed what she said. But Eleanor Roosevelt had a dream herself. Her dream was to make all women have equal rights. And even though she went through many hardships, she had a grand dream and was going to do anything it took to achieve and conquer that goal. She was a lady that knew hard work and a driven, determined mind that had a dream for the future would succeed. But to me, this quote that Eleanor stated resonates in my heart because you cannot imagine a future without a dream. Being a dreamer is what helps you morph your future. A good example is presidential elections because each candidate believes and envisions of what the future of this country could be like with them as president. This emphasizes how essential it is to have a dream for the future of this country. But this quote that Eleanor Roosevelt said vigorously, with compassion, not only showed significant meaning, but also proved how patriotic it was. This quote, in my opinion, truly shows patriotism for our country, because America started out with a great dream. Many envision America as the land of the free and the home of the brave. I guess you could say that someone who loves their country so much would want their country to prosper and become well known. So that is why it all starts from dreaming. When you have a dream and you believe in that dream, then there's no way anything can stop you from achieving that dream you once dreamed about for the future. Another example is Martin Luther King Jr. He was a passionate patriot who had a dream of what the future of this country could be like with equality of all races. And just like that, he started fighting for what he believed in. Martin Luther King Jr. had a driven dream for the future and made this dream put into action by the determination and the strength of his heart, mind, and soul. The main message I am trying to convey here is that dreaming can make you go above your limits. It also makes you passionate about attaining that high goal. So here we are again with Eleanor's influential and powerful quote. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of your dreams. This quote impacted many people and made them start dreaming for their own future. Dreaming on is an important essence of life. But if you have a dream or an aspiration, you must learn to follow it and not stumble across the wrong path. But just remember, if you have a dream, go and be adventurous by seeking that dream you always wanted for the future.
Good morning, judges, parents, and fellow contestants. My name is Aubrey Arndt. Imagine. Close your eyes and imagine. You're in a building high up in the sky, less than a mile away from the Twin Towers. You go to glance out the window and boom, you see the first plane hit. You're in shock, just like the other hundreds of people who saw it too. You're not sure what to believe. Was it an accident? You have no idea. You watch as paper and glass fall to the ground. Shortly after the first, a second plane hits. Now you know it's not an accident. You watch in horror as the people at the top of the building with no way out start jumping to the ground. You're horrified at what you're seeing, but you can't look away. You almost wish you hadn't woken up that morning. You wish you could do something, but you're just one person. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. A quote said by Helen Keller, almost too perfect for 9/11. On September 11th, 2001, disaster struck. Even though it seemed perfectly normal, disaster struck early on in the day. In New York and Pennsylvania, citizens of 78 countries were killed. This devastation hit many people and hurt family and friends. People's grief in mourning turned into anger and frustration. People were mad and wanted someone to blame. Attacks on former citizens of foreign countries broke out. No one knew who to blame. People used guns to let out their tears and anger. Also, a sense of unity. We all feel differently about what to do in response, but everyone seems to agree that we've got to be together no matter what happens. So you get a little sense in togetherness. A quote said by a regular young man on Times Square after 9/11. He was a patriot. He just wanted everyone to come together and help out. And even though this devastation didn't really affect other countries, they still mourn for those who lost loved ones and those who lost their lives. They also seemed to help and wanted to help other people. In times like 9/11, people's true patriot shines through. Other times like this are the earthquake in Haiti and the tsunami in Japan. People were sad and they wanted to help out. We sent food and water. People stood up and cared. People even flew out to help in shelters and rescue missions. Even though this was exactly for our country, we still helped. We knew what devastation felt like. The United States had been through a lot. But in all other countries' attempts to make us collapse, we've grown stronger. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. We've been through wars, depressions, and devastations, but that hasn't killed us. We're still standing tall and proud. We wore red, white, and blue to show we're proud of our country. People love this country. People die for its liberty and freedom. I know from firsthand experience how it feels to let a family member go to a foreign country and fight for us, but you have to remember it's for good. It's only for good. So let them go and show their patriotism and fight for us. They're doing it for you and for me. We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. So let's keep that title. Thank you.
Patriotism. It can be interpreted in so many ways, such as saying the Pledge of Allegiance every day when you go to school, or going to Washington, D.C. and looking at the memorials. To me, it means being willing to do anything for my country. Being able to say, yes, I can do that without worrying I will be killed for having an opinion of my own. And of course, being an American citizen. Herbert Paul Brooks Jr. once said, "Great moments are born from great opportunities." Herbert Brooks' great moment was defeating Czechoslovakia and winning the Olympic gold medal for the American hockey team. After winning the gold medal, he had so many more great opportunities to become a better coach, and he did. Later, when the Olympic Games were over, he became head coach for the New York Rangers. So in that time, when he became great, so many new doors opened up for him. Now, some of you may say, oh, that's just another man. People get those opportunities all the time. No. Not just anyone wins an Olympic gold medal when everyone thought he would fail, and there are also so many more great men and women that have had great moments as well. One example is our nation's 33rd president, Harry S. Truman. One of his great moments was he became president, and this allowed him to have great power and great responsibility. And with his great power, he was able to bring World War II to an end, with the help of the atomic bomb, of course. In 1945, the atomic bomb was dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There is no doubt, without Harry Truman, World War II would have had continued for many gruesome years. It is terrifying to think what would have happened if the bomb wasn't dropped. Our nation probably wouldn't have prevailed if it wasn't for him. So that man's great opportunity was having the ability to stop the war and help our country prosper, and he did. Who is this man? He abolished slavery, and he was the 16th president of the United States. If you are thinking of Abraham Lincoln, then you are correct. Even though this man abolished slavery, he was a slave owner himself. And he had so many speeches and campaigns to end slavery, and thank God they worked. Because who knows, without him, if slavery would still be around today. Abraham Lincoln was elected as president in March of 1861, and that allowed his great opportunity to become true. As American citizens, we have amazing opportunities every day, like being able to vote, having the job we want, going to college, and of course, living in a free country. There are many countries around the world that don't get these options. There are some Americans that take these opportunities for granted. We don't realize how lucky we are to live in a free country, to be able to say and do whatever we want. There may be consequences for our actions, but they are not nearly as bad as what other countries make it as consequences. So it goes to show from the early 1800s to the early 1900s, all the way to 2012 today, all men, women, boys, and girls, no matter your race or religion, have the opportunity to be great. So judges and teammates, when you think of patriotism, think of whatever you want. Whether it be looking at the flag, or going to Washington, D.C., or just being able to say yes. Just remember, great moments are born from great opportunities. Thank you.
What do we make of a life that's been bubble wrapped? Of citizens that sit vacantly while decisions for their country are made without consent? Of a government who treats its greatest resource, its people, like children unable to think for themselves, and of leaders fit to rule, watching their home change and wither without them? Democracy is such a delicious freedom that we take for granted sometimes. Honey, after all, tastes bland to the full. The experience of democracy is like the experience of life itself, James Carter states. Always changing, infinite in variety, sometimes turbulent, and all the more valuable for I have been tested by adversity. Democracy and life are built upon one another, like the stairs of America. But while life can sometimes become monotonous, democracy is eternally changing. It faces the greatest of catastrophes that threaten to break life as we know it. And because of those hardships, it learns to bend. 1776. Abigail Adams ignites more than a century-long quest for a more perfect democracy by telling her husband to mind the ladies in the new Constitution. 1848. The first ever women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls, New York, with Elizabeth Cady Stanton at its front. 1872. Susan B. Anthony and 11 other women are arrested for voting and held in jail for $500 bail, with Anthony herself at $1,000. 1878. The first time women's suffrage was ever introduced in a court of the U.S. In 1920, the 19th Amendment becomes a law on August 25th. Over the course of almost 150 years, American citizens have taken democracy's foundation and molded it into something beautiful. How people like Stanton and Anthony could stand unified against those who oppressed. How they refused to lose hope after anti-suffrage societies thrived, after countless bills were turned down without second thoughts and believers were locked in jail, denied fair trials, is beyond me. Could it be because they saw hope in America? A country glimmering on a hill where every last one of their citizens was able to forge America's future? When I think about how our democracy has changed over the course of America's history, and how our democracy has changed us as individuals and as a unity, it baffles me. The beauty of our being is that our democracy will never be something distant from us. It is in our lives. It shines and sheds light on us. It wraps us in a freedom-filled glow and changes us. But as we all know here, life can never be perfect. Democracy at times is just that. Americans, I invite you to remember a time when we didn't know our own backyard, when the Northwest Passage was more than just a myth, when the sparkling waters of the Mississippi ran unchallenged, when the roar of the Columbia reverberated deep and constant. Imagine a time when buffaloes and grizzly bears were unknown to us, when prairies sat undiscovered and the looming mountains in the distance were excruciating to cross, but still breathtaking at sight. While aboard the Lewis and Clark expedition, one of the most flawless acts of democracy took place. November 25th, 1805, deep into a harsh winter, the Corps of Discovery stood at the Pacific with a decision to make. Trudging through snow while half starving and half freezing isn't exactly doable, so a place to stay is obviously necessary, but where? Now Lewis and Clark, being the leaders of this fine expedition, could have made this decision alone and none would have batted an eyelash. But instead they chose to vote, an act of democracy to go unmatched. They chose to vote in a time when Native Americans were savages, when the black man was on the same level as an ox, and women were only as good as their last load of laundry. They chose to take the vote of a Cherokee woman and a black slave into consideration, a vote that concerned the Corps of Discovery's survival. They chose to vote. What if all democracies were like this? When the only race to be considered was mankind, when every last vote counted? Our democracy is what makes America incomparable, the land of the free. Our democracy is a living thing, always changing to fit the ways and rights of our people. And our democracy is a learning thing, always bettering itself from going through the worst. James Carter was very much right in saying that life is indeed like democracy itself. However, there was one major flaw. Life will forever be bound by the chains of death. Democracy means freedom. Thank you.
Before you learn what something is, Sometimes you must realize what it is not. Adlai Stevenson once said, "Patriotism is not short, frenzied outbursts of emotion, but the tranquil of steady dedication of a lifetime." Dedication takes time. You commit and you give yourself to something, someone, or some cause. Patriots come in all categories of people, all with varieties of sacrifices and contributions to this wonderful country. Many people, when asked to think of a patriot, automatically picture Abraham Lincoln and his presidency during the Civil War, or they picture the many soldiers dying and risking their lives for their fellow comrades. Are these patriots? Of course. Their vigorous love and compassion are being shown for this country through their everyday actions. George Sheehan once said, "Success means having the courage, the determination, and the will to become the person you believe you are meant to be." This man had the courage, saw for determination, and found the will throughout his lifetime while showing love and support for this country. George Sheehan was born in New York in 1918 and was the eldest of 14 children. He was an excellent student and succeeded at track and college. He served in World War II in the U.S. Staley battleship. This young man unselfishly gave himself and his education back to this country. He had courage because when he returned home from the Navy, he practiced medicine and found himself not so loving it. He was not in love with what he was doing, which was a principle he so strongly believed in. He gave up what he had worked so hard for so that he would fall in love with life again. When I hear certain words, I visualize something else. When I hear the word determination, I picture a rock, unbreakable, unyielding, and unmovable. A patriot should be determined to not let anything get in the way of what he is trying to complete. Simply, you are more likely to succeed when you love what you are trying to complete. Sheehan went back to a skill in which he once possessed, running. By this time, Sheehan was married and had 12 children. He was so determined that he would run 26 laps around his backyard just to complete 1 mile. During the winter, he would go to the extreme by running in a ski mask along the river during his lunch break. By age 50, Sheehan ran a 4:47 mile, the fastest mile to ever be completed by a 50-year-old man. His determination carried him to success. Sheehan became the author for many health magazines. He inspired education as he was the co-founder of the Christian Brothers Academy in New Jersey in 1958. In 1986, Sheehan was diagnosed with prostate cancer, but it already reached his bones. But with his will and passion, he continued running until his legs wouldn't last one other step. George Sheehan published a book shortly after his death in 1993. Now, he may not have popped in your head when you picture a patriot, but his determination, courage, and will can surely be pictured as one. This is what a patriot truly is. He succeeded in life because he was determined to become the man that he believed he was meant to be. He later said, "There are those of us who are always about to live. We are waiting until things change, until there's more time, until we are less tired, until. It always seems that something has to start for us to start living. But in my opinion, this man never stopped living. Now I ask you, are you ready to live?"
Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." Judges, fellow contestants, and guests. You may not realize this by looking at me, but I think about my future every minute of every day, wondering if what I want to be is possible. Many of my peers don't think about this, and for some of them, the reason is because they don't believe in themselves. I think what Miss Roosevelt has said is not only patriotic, but inspirational. We should all believe in ourselves and our dreams, even if the road we travel on is a hard one. Just take Abraham Lincoln, for example. He was just a small Kentucky boy who endured so much to fulfill his dreams and become the man we admire today. When he was young, not only did his family have financial issues, he lost his mother and sister to sickness. As he grew up, he dealt with failures in business and politics, as well as depression. But did he let it get in the way of believing in his own ideas? No. He is still considered one of our greatest presidents, in part because he followed his dreams, even after countless setbacks, ended up changing the world by becoming president and signing the Emancipation Proclamation to help start the process that put an end to slavery. Another more recent and far different example of following your dreams could be the actor Mark Wahlberg. He grew up in a very difficult part of Boston, Massachusetts. During interviews, he has said that as a young man, he was in a gang and knew people, friends even, that were killed. But the desperation of his situation really didn't sink in until he was arrested and put in jail. While he was in his cell, he envisioned a better life for himself. He would get an education, get out of Boston, and help all of the kids that were in his position before it was too late. And he did. In one of the worst gang cities in the US, poor and surrounded by negative peer pressure, he still made it. He became a big actor and started the Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation. It helped kids with similar circumstances get an education and stay out of trouble. It also raised close to $1 million for youth service enrichment programs like the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. What a wonderful dream to have accomplished. What about Eleanor Roosevelt herself? She was born into a wealthy family, but at the age of 8, her mother died, followed by her father 2 years later. 1 year after this, her brother died. I don't know about you, but I don't think I would have had the strength to go on after that. But she did. Even after all of this, she had goals, a strong desire to make a difference in the lives less fortunate than she, and she did. In a time where very few women had careers, she had a very active political life, even before becoming First Lady and after her husband died, and that never changed. She was always vocal in her support of the African American civil rights movement. She was outspoken in her support of Marian Anderson in 1939 when the black singer was denied the use of Washington's Constitutional Hall, and was instrumental in the subsequent concert held on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Eleanor didn't let tough times define her, but dreamed big enough to make a difference. We do not have to be defined by the misfortunes that happen to us or our families. We do not have to be defined by the financial situation that we are born into. This is America. It doesn't matter what area we live in or where we come from. We believe in taking advantage of our opportunities and that our dreams are worth pursuing, we can make it. People like Abraham Lincoln, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Mark Wahlberg are only a few who made a difference by following their dreams. You can too. If you take Miss Roosevelt's quote to heart as I have, you can conquer your fears and accomplish your dreams. Thank you.
Good morning, judges, parents, and fellow contestants. How many of you vote during elections? In America, only 58% of the US voters actually vote during elections. As Mr. Abraham Lincoln once said, democracy is the form of government that is supreme power vested in the people. So where are the patriots who are supporting one's national loyalty? It is the people's decision for who's going to run this nation, no one else's. In 6th grade, my school is electing kids for student government. I wanted to be vice president, so I put myself up to the challenge. Even though there are 5 other people running for that position, I tried my best. I wrote a speech and told what better things we could do for our school. Sooner or later, all that work paid off. I didn't become vice president, but I made other people get ideas on how we can make our school a better place for kids to learn. Schools should do student government so that kids see what it is like ruling a whole country. In 20 years, our children will be ruling these beautiful 50 states we call home. In 1856, hundreds of African American men were getting arrested because they just wanted to vote and have their opinions heard. They were doing nothing wrong. They were simple men with simple beliefs. But did getting arrested stop them? No. They kept getting arrested, and they kept fighting for what was right. See, in America, people do not get judged by their race, religion, appearance, opinions, but how their attitude is. So what is stopping you from voting? A citizen of the United States. You should claim your own rights and make your own decisions. You could be the meanest person on earth and still have your opinions. You could give donations to orphanages and still be able to vote. This is the land of the free, and nothing is going to change that. Now, we need to be encouraging our children to have their own opinions and choose wise leaders. We should be helping during voting sessions and be serving at voting precincts. We should be willing to share why we pick this person or that person so that people understand the values of people running for office. So I, Taylor DeYoung, challenge all of you to go out and not to be afraid to have your opinions heard. Thank you.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, judges, contestants. My name is Grant Alexander Johnson, and I'm here to give you a patriotic speech. And that's just what I plan to do. Democracy is the government for the people, of the people, by the people. A great man and personal hero of mine said that. That man was Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln grew up in a single-room log cabin in southeastern Kentucky. This is a perfect example to go to show that you do not have to come from a wealthy family, a rich college, expensive education to be something great. In a time like this, with the presidential elections coming on, we as Americans want to make the right decision in who leads this blessed country. For ever since 9/11, we have felt almost insecure. But then again, there are hundreds of people that have been working hard to protect and secure this country's borders. We are protected and secured from just about anything anybody else can throw at us. But the real hurt in this country is coming from the inside, with problems like the oncoming stock market crisis, loss of jobs, gas prices are skyrocketing. But I believe, because we are Americans, and this doesn't stop us, we look at these problems dead in the face. We don't slow, we don't come to a stop. Unlike other countries, some countries you are not even allowed to own a bicycle. That is terrible. In countries like that, you have limited, you can only have like one child. That's no good. But in God I trust that we as Americans will rise again to the top of the heap, because we are Americans and that is what we do. We are always on the rise, getting better every day. Now, I believe, I really do, in this country, that any member of mankind that walks the U.S. soil today can be patriotic. All of you in this room are patriotic just by showing up to an event like this. Watching your kids and your family members do this, that's patriotic. In God I trust that we as a country will rise above this hate and problems in this blessed country. So God bless America on this day, because without patriotism, without liberty, without God, it wouldn't be America. But since we have all those things, we are America. And being Americans, we will rise to the top of the heap. Because we are Americans, that is what we do. My name is Grant Alexander Johnson. This was my patriotic speech. Thank you so much for coming.
What comes to mind when opportunity is mentioned? Some might say an appropriate time or occasion. I think of it more as a chance, something that, when it arises, you don't hesitate to take it. Parents, contestants, judges. Herb Brooks, an Olympic hockey coach, once said, "Great moments are born from great opportunities." If George Washington, one of the founding fathers of our country, never fought for America's rights, how would that affect our freedoms? If Harriet Tubman never thought about helping the African American slaves escape segregation, how would they be treated in our modern day society? And if Martin Luther King Jr. never took the time to speak on freeing the African Americans from segregation, who else would have had the valor to take a stand? All three of these influential figures, George Washington, Harriet Tubman, and Martin Luther King Jr., were patriots because their opportunities influenced great moments, which made opportunities for others possible. Many of you should be familiar with the name George Washington. Earlier in his career, he was elected into the Virginia House of Burgesses. In this position, he spoke against British standards. He took chances to stand up for what he believed in, which was equal rights for his country. Washington is better known as the first president of the United States of America. He must have had strong feelings about his country in order to agree to this appointment. Washington was the commander-in-chief for the Continental Army in the Revolutionary War. With Washington on our side to take chances for our country, we were a success, directed to victory by a born leader. George Washington, a true American patriot, showed pure patriotism by using his circumstances to ensure that our nation would pride in opportunity. Another true patriot who took chances was Harriet Tubman, a woman born into slavery. When she was 13 years old, her master threatened to beat a runaway slave with a 2-pound weight. In defending her comrade, she was hit with the weight instead, and for the rest of her life, she was plagued with sleeping spells. She was so devoted to defending her country that she took the opportunity at great personal risks to save them. Harriet helped over 300 slaves escape to the north. Her constant effort to free slaves from hardships made it possible for them to reach freedom. If she had never taken this opportunity, many African Americans would have suffered greatly and would have remained slaves. Finally, when she was older, Harriet Tubman stood up for women's rights. She played a huge role in persuading that women were equal to men. She herself was a woman with little freedom to begin with. Both African Americans and all women would have suffered greater abuse if not for Harriet Tubman. Her willingness to take opportunities she was given created opportunities for others. One who later benefited from her efforts was Martin Luther King Jr., an African American man. In his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," he makes a point to say, "This nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Dr. King took the opportunity to emphasize that our nation should be equal and just. He goes on to say, "One day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight." He ends with, "All of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring." Martin Luther King took the opportunity to use his education and influence to peacefully rally the African American race. Martin Luther King Jr. promoted civil rights and opened unimaginable opportunities for generations of African Americans. These three historical figures demonstrated devotion through helping their colleagues. George Washington fought for his rights and for his people. Harriet Tubman took risks and assisted over 300 slaves escape to the north. Martin Luther King Jr. disapproved of segregation and took the time to make it known. Herb Brooks once said, "Great moments are born from great opportunities." If we responsibly choose to act on our chances, we too can become patriots by using our moments to improve ourselves and open new opportunities for others.
Then conquer we must, whenever our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph shall wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave, wrote Francis Scott Key. This song you all know as our national anthem, but do you know why it became our country's song? It became our song because it sings about what true Americans are brave enough to do. It sings about how we all came together to prevent our tattered flag from touching the stained soil so we would not be captured by Britain. It sings about the sacrifices Americans made to keep our freedoms. Most importantly, it sings about what true American patriotism can do when we all come together as one. Alone, our flag would have fallen onto the ash and blood-covered ground, defeated, but together we held our flag proud and high, not letting it fall. Helen Keller once said, "Alone you can do so little, but together you can do so much." America truly lives by this quote because we have come together to help one another and our country on so many different occasions. When England sent British troops to attack us at Fort McHenry, where we were greatly outnumbered as they continually bombed us, trying to lower our morale, kill our men, and make our flag touch the ground, signaling surrender. When our soldiers saw the flag starting to fall, they climbed up the pole and they held our flag proudly and high. When one soldier would fall, a new soldier would run and take his place. They sacrificed their lives to hold our flag up. If only one man had held the flag up on his own, we would have been captured by Britain. However, because we all came together and the soldiers shared the responsibility as each man would fall, we were not captured and we did not surrender. As Francis Scott Key observed these events taking place and saw how the Americans came together to defend our freedoms, he was inspired to write the Star-Spangled Banner, which proclaims that when we are united, we can do so much more. We united as one to not only help ourselves and our country, but other countries and people as well. As a whole world, we have come together to help each other out when times get rough. When Osama bin Laden had suicide bombers crash into the Twin Towers, killing thousands upon thousands of Americans, America came together to help one another. We were no longer a country divided by our races, ethnicities, beliefs, and backgrounds. Rather, we were Americans united as one big family to support each other through the crisis. When Hurricane Katrina devastated the city of New Orleans in August 2005, killing hundreds and destroying everything, America came together to send relief workers, resources, and money to help the recovery efforts. We all came together to rebuild the towns, find the survivors, and comfort the people. And together, we saved lives, rebuilt homes, and we gave them a sense of hope. In 2010, when the earthquake and tsunami rocked Haiti, killing thousands and destroying everything, America came together once more to help Japan. We assembled all of the needed resources, money, doctors, and volunteers and sent them over on ships. We helped recover their survivors, provided needed necessary shelter, food, money, and anything else that they needed, and we gave them hope. Our country comes together as a nation to not only help ourselves and our country, but other less fortunate countries that may need our help. Together, we can make more of an impact than if we were alone. In the 1940s, during World War II, there was a metal shortage throughout our country. Americans were asked to work together to save their metal, which would be used to manufacture machinery, weapons, and ammunition for the war. Also, during this period, when England faced possible invasion, they realized that massive amounts of blood would be needed for their military. The United States Armed Forces asked Red Cross to form a national blood donor program to collect and ship blood overseas. Again, for these programs to succeed, it took a tremendous effort by many Americans joining together to accomplish the goal. Throughout history, Americans have been there for each other in times of war and in times of crisis. We all came together to fend off Britain, to keep our independence, and to hold our flag up high. We became no longer divided, but united when we were attacked on September 11th, 2001. When Hurricane Katrina devastated the city of New Orleans, we again began together to get our country through that natural disaster. When Haiti, Japan was rocked by an earthquake and tsunami, together we helped them through their crisis. No matter what conflict arises, our country comes together as one family to take care of one another, our country, and other countries. Alone, you really can't accomplish much, but together, as one, anything is possible. Helen Keller really was right. Alone you can do so little. Together you can do so much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, what reason do we have to be patriotic? To answer this question in full, the meaning of patriotism must be understood. According to Merriam-Webster's, patriotism is simply love or devotion to one's country. Another way to phrase the question would be to ask what reason we have to love our country. I believe the reason for our patriotism is liberty. We have the ability to bear arms, vote, say and write what we want, petition the government, or even run for a federal office. These are just a few of the numerous rights and liberties we have in our country. But have you ever considered the cost? Will Rogers, a man remembered for his witty commentary on American society and politics, once said, "Liberty doesn't work as well in practice as it does in speeches." Now, liberty is the state of being free within society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life. Even though absolute liberty would result in anarchy, we are gifted with much more freedom in our country than other countries have. For example, in China, men and women are not allowed to choose their own career or have any more than one child. In North Korea, the people don't elect their own ruler, but instead the title of premier is passed from father to son. Likewise, in Saudi Arabia, the title of king is inherited. Also in Saudi Arabia, women are not allowed to choose their own husbands and are prohibited from driving. How does this lifestyle sound to you? Luckily, here in the United States, we have the gift of freedom. This gift allows individuals to make their own decisions about their lives, such as which career to choose or how many children to have. In addition, we have a voice in our government. Gifts are seldom free, however. From the time of the Revolutionary War up to this very moment, our liberty is hard-earned. Over the years, countless wars have endangered this country's greatest gift. And even today, terrorists threaten our liberty by attempting to harm unarmed civilians and spread fear across the country. Liberty isn't something you can put a price tag on. It can only be measured by lives, hardships, and the sacrifice of comfort. It's sad to see how little we stop and appreciate that sacrifice. Look around. A man wants to choose his religion. A woman wants to choose her husband. You want to choose the leader of your country? No, no, and no. Many rights we take for granted wouldn't exist without liberty. Of course, not everything Americans do to maintain liberty is accomplished on the battlefield. This year, many adults are voting in the presidential elections, and by exercising their right and responsibility to vote, they're expressing patriotism and upholding liberty. Whenever a student stands up for the underdog, defends the disabled, or performs a small act of kindness to help someone in need, that individual supports liberty right alongside the soldiers on the front lines. Every day, young and old express and maintain liberty just by exercising their rights. Every time you vote, go to church, carry a weapon, express your opinion, or post on a blog, you uphold and support the liberty we have in our country. We can't go through life taking those rights and freedoms for granted. Otherwise, one day we might wake up to find them gone. We need to stop and appreciate those privileges. And if the need arises, fight for our liberties. It's when we stop and appreciate it that we begin to feel patriotic. It's then that we feel the warm glow of pride in our country. Liberty is the one thing that as long as you live in the United States, you can count on. It doesn't matter if you're the homeless man on the side of the road, the underdog, or even the president. They all have the equal rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty doesn't work as well in practice as it does in speeches because talk is cheap. Liberty demands responsibility, not only every 4 years during election season, but in everyday acts of kindness toward our fellow Americans. Will Rogers was trying to get across that liberty isn't easy. It takes each and every one of us, whether soldier or 8th grade student, maintaining and defending liberty through the small and great acts of kindness and courage. Liberty isn't a word to be tossed about lightly in speeches, but instead an ideal to be worked toward and sacrificed for. Liberty is the essence of American patriotism. Thank you.
Good morning, judges, guests, and fellow contestants. My name is Fatima Farheen. What comes to your mind when someone mentions the word democracy? Democracy is the government that is of the people, by the people, for the people. Abraham Lincoln spoke these famous words during his Gettysburg Address, which gave them a profound meaning. However, they are still relevant today and motivate me in my life. Democracy is the government that is of the people, by the people, for the people. It was spoken to help inspire all Americans during the times of Civil War. Lincoln knew that many men had died fighting in the war and wanted to ensure the people that the men had not lost their lives in vain. Rather, they had lost their lives to make a stand for freedom. He also stated that the Gettysburg Address will not be remembered by the future generations. He, however, was wrong. We still remember his words today and use them to inspire us, not only in America, but all around the world. Imagine where we would have been if the patriotic men would not have fought to end the Civil War. There would still be slavery and segregation. Our states would have still been divided into the Confederacy and the Union. Situations like this can be found throughout the world today. On December 18, 2010, the rebels in Middle East set out to throw the dictators out of power. These were ordinary people that protested and participated in marches and rallies so they can have a democratic government where the people come first. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people in Middle East want a democracy similar to ours, but freedom does not come without a fight. The people know that and are willing to start uprisings, like the Arab Springs, and they're succeeding with their efforts. Presidents in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya had to step down because of the anger from the people. But that is not all. The protesters in Syria are still fighting today. More than 13,600 people have been killed trying to get a democracy. Many people across the world have even thought about nominating some of the patriotic protesters for the Nobel Peace Prize. The protesters want a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Lincoln's words also have a meaning to my life. I cannot imagine living in the USA without my freedom. I was born in India and moved here when I was 7. Upon arrival, I was given my rights. America is very different than India. I imagine America as a place where patriots live. People like soldiers, police officers, teachers, doctors, or even ordinary people doing the right things are patriots in America. Even though India has the largest democracy, there is no such thing as a patriotic police officer or even a patriotic teacher. People in India get bribed every day just to get their work done. That is just one of the reasons I feel secure of being in America. According to the First Amendment, I have the freedom of speech, religion, press, to gather, and to petition. These are the rights I would not have had if I were to live in India, because there the government likes to control the freedom of a person. America has several opportunities to offer me. Without my freedom, I would have to finish my education by the age of 16 and will be forced to marry like in other countries. I come to school every day, and every morning, my heart swells with pride as I see the other students of different races and beliefs than I, looking at the red, white, and blue flag, saying the pledge. I am proud to live in a country where there's a democracy, because growing up in America means growing up open-minded and not judging people by the way they are. I am fortunate because in other countries, people still get called names for how they look, their religion, or even their gender. I think I show patriotism because I do the right things and stay loyal to the country I truly love, America. Democracy is the government of the people, by the people, for the people. This quote is timeless because it applies to a wide array of situations, including the Civil War, the Arab Springs, and to my life. Now, I challenge you to think what you can do to fulfill your part in the government. Thank you.